At Vanguard, this is more than just a retirement plan. This is your cappuccino date in Italy, the beach house with the matching bicycles. It's your rental car down memory lane, and weekends reuniting with friends from over the years. This is the future you imagined, and Vanguard is here to help you build it. Because at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor, you're an owner. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
He carried that guilt with him for 60 years. So he said to me, I will do anything I can to help you. And he hugged me like I was the son he had before I went into the Marines.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Hope you had a good Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, if you don't, I hope you had a great weekend. It was an awesome weekend for us. We had such a great time with family, and I am actually so excited about today's episode too, because it's been a long time coming. I met Ron over a year ago at a Veterans Day bike ride from an adventure. So I was out on a bike packing adventure a few weekends before the Veterans Day ride. Met this guy who was so interested, and he and I got to talking. Shout out Dwayne if you're listening. And he was like, hey man, we're going to be doing this bike ride for Veterans Day in a couple weekends. You should come out and bring Athletic Brewing, the non-alcoholic beer you work for. It'd be a huge hit at this Veterans ride. And I said, oh, that'd be fantastic. It's at this beautiful beach near our home. I'd love to go. So I brought all the beer I had. And it's to support veterans, like I said, and they had a big steak dinner. The beer goes so great with that. Then everybody can drive home safe because it's non-alcoholic beer. And the guy putting on the event, the guy who was who started the whole organization the ride was for, was there, Ron, who we're talking to today. And he had no shoes on his feet. And I thought, and it was raining, there was stuff going on. He was carrying stuff. And I was like, hey man, why aren't you wearing shoes? And he looks right at me and says, because I don't want to. You got a problem with that? And I was like, dang. No, I'm good. I just was curious. And we got to talking. And I asked him, well, why aren't you wearing shoes? Is there a story? And he gave me a quick synopsis. And then he mentioned that he had thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail with no shoes on and walked across America with no shoes on. And I said, man, I don't know how or when. We're going to have you on my podcast at some point. That is sounds like an incredible story. I cannot wait to hear more. And you're not going to be disappointed. I was able to sit down with Ron for about an hour, hear some of his story. He recently had a book come out. The whole organization, the book, everything is called The Long Walk Home. That's longwalkhome.org, and that's also the name of the book. And I have read parts of the book. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it is way more detail. It is Ron's story of becoming, or against his will, honestly, a Marine. His guilt from the Vietnam War as part of his squadron died, and he did not. And he decided to take off his shoes as a way to deal with the grief, deal with the guilt, and to deal with it emotionally. But as you'll hear, he kept it to himself why he took his shoes off. But he hasn't worn shoes since 1972, and he has recently started putting shoes back on. While the time he wasn't wearing shoes, he's done some incredible things and continues to through his organization. So I highly encourage you to check out what they're doing at the longwalkhome.org, as well as checking out Ron's book. He's a hell of a storyteller. So I'm excited to bring this story to you today. But, that's enough of me setting it up. But I just want to say, Ron, thank you so much for being on. I love, love, love having people on from a personal connection or from someone I met out in the world. So this one's a true pleasure to bring to you today. And it's a great one to get us geared up for a brand new year. So enjoy. Have a wonderful week. You'll be hearing from us on Thursday. Here we go. Ron, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. The first thing I want to ask you is, what kind of home did you grow up in, and where did you grow up?
Okay, well, I grew up on Long Island in the Hamptons. And people think, oh, well, you're rich. No, there's somebody had to take care of those rich people. That's what we did. And my household was a dysfunctional World War II home. My father, we're Polish. You get that from the last name. And my father had a choice at the age of 17 to go to prison for armed robbery for 4 years or go into the military. So he chose the military. And he got to be one of the guys that went to Auschwitz for the tour at the end of the war. And they're scraping our relatives off the floor in the ovens. So that's the guy that raised me. So I got beat physically or verbally every day. And, I thought he didn't love me, but I realized that he was preparing me for the world that he saw. So he loved me the best he could. He was always there, drunk or sober. He was drunk every day. So he was always there, but it wasn't like, it wasn't an Ozzie and Harriet household, and so that's, so like we didn't do, he would take us fishing and he would do stuff with us, but he worked a lot to keep food on the table and so we could keep drinking, back then that was the deal. But so I started fighting at an early age, because I was angry a lot. So I got into fighting, and my third cousin was Tony Zale, the middleweight champ of the world. So I thought I was bad and tough, so I fought a lot and took mixed martial arts and all that stuff. And how I got into the camping was that when I went through a divorce and I knew I was going to lose my mind because of the divorce, because I lost my kids. I decided that I had to go away and do something to be totally away from it. So to find some peace. So I walked the Appalachian Trail in the late 80s just to find some peace. And I did that barefoot. And I made all my own gear out of Tyvek.
Right. Yeah, you were telling me that. And I want to ask you, growing up in the Hamptons on Long Island, why did you know? Was it instinctive to know that out in the woods and out and doing adventure was going to be a healing process? How did you know that was going to work or help?
What happened was I just heard somebody talk about it, that, the trail's a good place. And then, I also had read the book, A Mutant Message, Down Under, where this woman took a walkabout and walked across Australia. And I figured, it made sense to me to, the Indians did it. And, I believed in vision quests and all that kind of stuff. So I figured, what? I got nothing to lose because I didn't know what to expect. And I gave power of attorney to the guy that worked for me in my business. So that if I don't come back, sell it and make sure my father and my brother get the money I owe them. Because I had no idea if I was going to live, get killed. I had no clue what to expect, but I was going because I had to, and it was my vision quest. Because what happened was I went to go speak to God, who I, was angry at. And so I sat for, I walked for like 2 weeks, and then I sat for 3 days in the woods and didn't do anything and just was quiet waiting to hear God talk to me. So that's how I started doing it. It was my vision quest. And I, think I'm so tough and everything. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to be like an Indian and be self-reliant and not rely on man-made stuff. But I combined the two worlds by making my own gear out of paper because I wasn't going to go kill a deer and make a bag out of it and, make my tent. I figured, let me combine both worlds. I'll be self-reliant, make all my own gear, which was my tent, my sleeping bag, my rain gear. I made everything out of that.
Wow.
So that, and I brought a roll of tape with me so that I could do repairs, because, I don't like counting on anybody, and I like to be self-sufficient, because, I think, that only I'm doing it. But I realize that, I never do anything alone. There's other people there, the guys that made the Tyvek, the guys that made the tape. I always think, oh, I did it. No. But, so I learned a lot, I'll tell you that. Because I used to get advice from people, so I would have somebody to blame if it went wrong. But going out there on my vision quest, it was me, and I'm the only one that could give myself the answers I needed. And I did get the answer,
Yeah. And I want to ask you, going back a little bit, you mentioned being barefoot. Now that's going to be in the title, doing this stuff barefoot. What I know you've probably told the story a million times, but what led to you? I know you are a veteran. You were actually born on Veterans Day. You were destined. You couldn't even get away from it if you wanted to. You were in the Marines, and a response of how to deal with the loss of some folks in your squadron, you decided to not wear shoes. Can you take us through like that story and why you did that?
Okay, well, to give you some more clarity on that, I went in the Marines to hurt my parents. I won the draft lottery. Back then they had the lottery. Yeah. And the only way they could get people, they had, it was all political nonsense. But so my number was 34 and I was going, but I don't believe in killing. But, at that age, everything is black and white. If you say this and do that, you're a hypocrite. And, being angry as I was at everybody and everything, we're real Catholic. I mean, I can't get away from being Catholic if I try, So what I did to hurt my parents, because I believed they were hypocrites. So when they said to me, why are you going in the Marines? You don't believe in killing. I said, well, it must be all right if the church doesn't stop it. And I want to see what it's like to kill somebody. And then my mother just sat there and cried. And then I realized, how you think you know what you want when you go for something, and after you get it, you realize you didn't want that. Well, I realized that that's not really what I wanted, So I felt terrible. And, and at that age, you think you know what you're doing. You have no clue. So when I go in, I realize it's no game. We really do kill people. And I get into a fight with my commanding officer and have orders to go to Vietnam. So he invites me into his office after I get my orders and says, what do you think of that, Zaleski? And I says, I think the only way you're getting me over there is if you chain me to a helicopter, because I'm not going. He says, is that right? I said, that's right. So I leave there and I don't tell my parents when I get home. And I get down on my knees and I say, God, help me, because I don't think I have the courage not to shoot another man. I'm afraid and I want to live. So I decided I'm not going to run to Canada. I'm going to, suffer my consequences. So I go out there and I'm prepared to go to prison for 5 years for disobeying the direct order. I get out there and I'm supposed to go with 5 other guys that I knew from the base. They all go. When it comes my turn, I say, I'm not going. They said, don't worry, coward, your orders have been changed. And I'm like, thank you, God. Not realizing my commanding officer probably realized I'd get myself killed and probably everybody around me. So I don't think anything of it. I just think I'm lucky. And then a month before I get out, I see one of the 5 and he's limping. And I said, what happened? He says, we all got shot and 2 died. So I felt all this guilt, shame, anger all at once just flood me. And I figured I didn't want them to have died and suffered in vain. They fought for my freedom. I can do what I want. I'm not wearing shoes. So when I got out, I didn't wear shoes. And people would say to me, hey, how come you're not wearing shoes? I'd say, I don't feel like it. You got a problem with that?
I think you told me that when I asked you.
Yeah.
And, man, you're not anybody I want to mess with either.
Well, I don't have that much money in the bank to back up my checks anymore, but I'll make you hurt anyway,
Well, can I ask you this? Why was that the response? Had you ever seen that before? Or was that just the first thing you thought of and said, that's how I'm going to express this?
It was, it, it wasn't really a memorial. It, it was, it was a meaningless penance, a hollow memorial, because it was my act of defiance. It was another way I could express my anger and just be an angry guy. That's what it was. And, when I realized that I was angry for 33 years. 33 years, people would ask me why, and I'd get that response. And people would leave me alone. And, you didn't want me in your house. And, I wasn't a real nice guy. And then what happened in 2005, this little kid asked me, how come you don't wear shoes? And that's the first person I told in 33 years. And when I told him why, I realized that I'm the problem. I haven't helped a soul. This so-called penance I have for my friends meant nothing because it didn't do anything to help them. And that was unacceptable to me. And I was going to change that to create awareness for post-traumatic stress because, then, I started to look and see the data that, 18 vets a day are committing suicide. And I figured I could do something to help. And I figured on the trail, going on the Appalachian Trail, those people seemed to have their act together and they would help me spread the word out because, I didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't a good speaker. I didn't have any influence, but I figured if I did it on the trail that these guys would help me get the word out. And so I made my gear and, I spent a couple of days making my gear, getting excited. And, a lot of people say, oh, if this doesn't work, I have plan B and C. There was no plan B or C with me. I have a goal. My goal was to walk the whole trail barefoot. There was no plan B or C. I'll shift and I'll do something different. But I totally relied on myself and my equipment and my ability. And I went with that. And when people say, oh, I got a plan B or a plan C, that's saying they're afraid. That's saying they have doubt. That's saying that goal really isn't that important. I mean, this is my take. Because with me, when I make up my mind to do something, I cut the lines to the dock and I'm gone. And my path may not look as straight as I originally intended, but that's my goal. And that's where I'm going till I die or somebody stops me. So, I mean, these people, I met guys on the trail, they had gear, they had plenty of food, they had shoes, what a bunch of and then they quit. Oh, it's hot. Oh, my feet hurt. Yeah. So, if you look at anything already negative, like you can't make it, I look at it as, well, I got to find a way around this because there's a way around it because there's a million ways to do something.
Right.
My
right.
gear
That's
break.
your plan B is another way to get the same goal done.
Yeah. That is, I have the same goal. My goal doesn't change.
You decided to not wear shoes, and you mentioned that was your personal act of penance, but you never shared that with anybody. You never told anybody why you weren't wearing shoes until that little boy back in 2006 or 2005. Right. And at the time, what were you doing with your life? That was 33 years. I know you were you were a business owner. You were
I had
your life trying to make it.
I created my own world. I got out of the Marines. I went and lived in the woods for a year because I had so much trouble with people. I went home. My father had started the business, but it was drinking his way through it. My mother was running the business, which was a scuba shop. And I could see he was just beating her into the dirt. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to come out of the woods, burning my bridges there because I had a shingle mill and I had a commune up there. And I left it, got rid of my shingle mill and went home and got married because I figured that would be the real big anchor to keep me there, and worked the family business and took it over. And then I made my own rule because, since I ran the business, I didn't have to wear shoes.
Right.
Because I'm the boss.
No shoes, no shirt. Doesn't matter.
That's right. I don't care if you come in naked, as long as you're carrying money.
Right. As long as you can put it somewhere.
Yeah. As long as you wash it off before I get it, I'm happy.
Right.
So, so I basically created my own world, which was insulated from all the other stuff. I avoided watching news most of the time. That's how I lived. So I was kind of in denial, shut off from the rest of the world. And, I fought with the town. I fought with the board. I fought with everybody, because nobody was going to tell me what to do. But, so that's how I survived, because I, took over the family business, built it up, and so that I could live any way I wanted. I had money and a wife and all that and family, but I destroyed my marriage because I was, punishing myself all the time. I met my father before I went and walked on the trail. And he says to me, because he and we had a bad relationship, because when I get back from the Marines, he said, "I'm proud of you." And I said, "I'm not, I'm ashamed," because they treated us like animals and spit on us. So my father, he was from the World War II era. And so he didn't understand this whole Vietnam thing. So, he just turned his back on me and walked away. So from that day on, it was a rough relationship. And so before I'm going into the woods, he says to me, "What are you punishing yourself for?" So when I told him why, that's the second time in my life I saw my father cry. Because he said, "I was in for the last 5 months of the war." He said, "I'm on the train coming home with a guy after the war's over. And the guy's sitting behind me and he says, I've been in the foxholes for 5 years. I don't know how to act when I get home." My father turns around. The train goes on. It hits a bump. One of those heavy footlockers drops out of the overhead rack, hits this guy in the head and kills him instantly. My father says, "Why didn't God take me instead of him?" He carried that guilt with him for 60 years. So, so he said to me, "I will do anything I can to help you." And he hugged me like I was the son he had before I went into the Marines. So,
How did you transition that into the experience? I'm sure you felt that like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing now, without a doubt. Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, Mason.
If you don't know, Kurt is the former host of Adventure Sports Podcast. Kurt, I heard you had a little story for us.
Okay, true story. A couple of years ago, I decided it was finally time to get just the right ski for me. But ski technology changes so quickly, and I really didn't know what I needed, so I just went to Powder 7, and I told them my skier ability, how I wanted the ski to perform in the POW and on the corduroy and in the bumps, and they pointed at a ski in the wall and said, "I think this is the one for you." Of course, they showed me several others and told me how they would differ, but in the end, they said, "But based on what you said, this is probably the one." I have never had as much fun on a ski as the one that they recommended for me. So if you're going to buy new skis, why not buy the right ones for you? And to do that, go to Powder 7. They really know what they're talking about.
And I also wanted to add, they have pretty much perfected the art of buying skis online too. So even if you're not in the area, they have a very robust website, extremely helpful. And the cool thing too, they do sell a lot of used demo skis. So I know we on the show are always looking for deals. That's a great way to save a little money if budget's tight right now. So definitely check out Powder 7 by going to powder7.com. Again, that's powder7.com.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Don't let stress wear you down. End the year feeling great at Planet Fitness with our big end-of-year sale. Join for just $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime now through December 31st. And end the year on the right or left foot with tons of variety and space in our squeaky clean and spacious clubs. And use the crowd meter in our app to pick the best time to visit. Join for just $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime. In club, online, or on our app. Deal ends December 31st.
Join now at your local club or online at planetfitness.com. Hurry, deal ends Friday, December 31st.
See club for details.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Well, no, I was still clueless because, when I did the walk, I figured, well, I'm going to create awareness for post-traumatic stress and I'm going to be a hero. And I'm getting people to sign letters and stuff. And I got a hearing in Congress. I got to have a hearing while I'm out in the woods. Somebody found out about me, told the congressman. I get a phone call that they want me to go to Washington and speak. So I'm like, okay, so I go and, you like me, I always think I know what I'm doing, but the older I get, the more I realize I'm clueless. So, I think, well, they're going to hear me and they're going to do what I tell because I've got some secret they don't know where they know all of this stuff. They're just not doing anything about it. And they're just saying, oh, you're doing a great job, keep it up. But then they didn't do anything. I wanted mandatory counseling for all soldiers and military personnel prior to discharge. They have a TAP program, transit awareness program, but it's not enough. It's got to do more than it is. But, so it was, and also I realized that walk that I did in the woods was my penance to forgive myself for sitting on my hands for 33 years, being angry, being the problem.
Wow. Well, tell me when you started walking barefoot on the trail, by the way, did you come across anyone else kind of on a similar vision quest, a similar journey? And tell us about some of the experience of being out there doing that. That's a big goal for anybody, much less trying to achieve the things you're aiming for and doing it barefoot.
Well, a lot of people were out there walking for a cause. I saw that and I appreciated that because they figured it's a way to get awareness because not everybody walks the Appalachian Trail, the whole thing,
Right.
And, and it's a tough thing because you're up and down, mountain property that people won't buy to build houses on. So it's pretty harsh stuff, some of it, and, there's a lot of people out there and I would talk to people, I'll never forget one lady came up to me and she started talking about, oh, you've got to, protest the, that they're using, spent uranium for the weapons and stuff, and it's causing all this damage. And, she went on and on. I says, well, and she says, help me. I says, well, what are you doing about it? Well, nothing. I'm talking to you. I says, well, that's how much help I'm going to give you because I see how much it means to you. And she got pissed off and walked away. And that's how I used to be. I used to see things that I saw with social problems and tell people what they should do to fix it and didn't do anything myself. So, of course, nobody's going to help me because obviously it doesn't mean anything to me. And how can they help me if they have to do all the work? So it was a real big eye opener for me. And like I said, it was my penance to forgive myself because I had punished myself for years for that whole era and, and why I went in the Marines and what I had done and all the guys that get killed and all the guilt that they're dead and I'm alive. And maybe I could have done something, or did I do the right thing by sticking up for what I believe in? Because when I was in boot camp, not all those guys want to go kill somebody, and they're all afraid. Guys that aren't afraid, there's something wrong with them. These guys that say, oh, I'm not afraid. Well, I'm afraid. I want to live and I'll do whatever it takes. And I met guys that said that, he says, I do whatever it takes to get home. And I get it. We're not trained our whole lives to kill. We're trained for 12 weeks to kill, go against everything we've taught and believe. And then we're put in a life and death situation. And then, some of us kill and then we have to live with that forever. And people think, well, just get over it. No, you don't get over that. You
Right.
know, and the only way I can explain it to civilians is, okay, you're driving a car, your whole family's in it, and you get in this horrific accident. It might be your fault, it may not. We'll never know. Everybody dies but you. Well, get over it. You know, people die in a car accident. So what? Your baby was, crushed in front of you. Get over it. No, you don't get over that. So I mean, we have more in common than we have differences. In this country, we try to make everybody different than everybody else. No, we're all the same. We have a little different point of view, but why do we have to pick teams and make enemies of one another? I mean, it's silly. And I was real reluctant the first time I went on the trail barefoot. I got to tell you, because
Yeah, I was going to ask you, were you afraid of that experience? Like, it's a big journey.
Yeah, the first time when I went for my vision quest, I was concerned, because nobody, I mean, one guy from Africa did it, like, 40 years before or more. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, and, get hurt and this and that. And then plus I didn't know. I figured, well, I'm going to get eaten by a bear or killed or God knows what, But the second time I went, I was a little concerned about doing the whole thing barefoot, because when I did that little short thing, my feet bothered me, I got to tell you. But I learned to pace myself, and I figured if I, put on shoes now, what am I going to tell people why I went barefoot? That knew me that I went barefoot. And I says, oh, now you're going to wear shoes? Well, why didn't you wear it before? So I kind of painted myself into a corner in a way, and I'm glad I did, because of doing it barefoot, I got attention, and that attention I used to create awareness. But I got to tell you, there's a lot better gear to use than Tyvek and felt, because I used one piece of felt as my blanket in a Tyvek bag, and the concept was that the Tyvek would keep me dry, which it weeps, so you don't really stay dry. And God bless felt, I got to tell you that, because I started in the north end and went south. And, I went through snow and all of that barefoot. And what I would do was start later in the day, so the sun at least got on the ground, and there was at least some black mud, which absorbs the sun, so I would get some warmth on my feet. But I had one change of clothes, a piece of felt, and Tyvek. And I put my water bottles on my sticks to distribute the weight better. So one of the things that happened, because I made my gear and I made it so that it was on my shoulders, that after like 8 months, I had to get off the trail. I think it was 7 months. I got off the trail because my legs went numb. Because of being barefoot, there was no cushion, and the weight on my shoulders compressed my spine, so my legs went numb. So I got off the trail for 5 months and made this traction rack for myself, and then went back on the trail and finished it 5 months later. So, but what I had done was remake my gear so it all went on my hips. And I had my water bottles on my stick so that at least my arms didn't turn into twigs.
Jeez. And I didn't realize what else you had to consider with your feet. That was one of my questions, was what unique challenges were you facing that other hikers weren't who had shoes on?
Yeah, well, I had to go slower because I had to be mindful of where my feet were, because, once I tore like a whole slab of my skin off the bottom of my foot and taped it back on, because I just sheared it off when I hit a rock with my foot.
And were your feet getting tougher over time, or were they weakening or like getting softer and softer?
No, they were getting like an animal's foot. One day I had some gum on my heel and I scraped it off, and there was something shiny under it, and I pulled it out and I had a staple in my foot and didn't know it.
Oh my God. I bet you did. I bet you had some calluses that were about an inch thick.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how bad my feet looked. And I had this like a photographer and a news reporter take a picture of my feet and write an article in the paper. And when I talked to my sister said, when Mom saw that picture of your feet and read the article, she cried. And the caption under the thing was, his toes look like swollen sausages, because and it didn't even look almost like a human foot. And I didn't realize it because I wore them every day and went every day, and it was slow
over time.
Yeah, and then what happened was I started to use Bag Balm after a couple months, because what was happening, you walk through the mud and the marshes and stuff, and it leaches the oil out of your feet. So then they start cracking and splitting. So I would walk the first half an hour in the morning. My feet were so stiff and sore that they started to get pliable. Either that or my feet just stopped complaining because they knew I wasn't going to stop anyway.
You're going through the trail and you're getting towards the end. Tell us about, finishing the trail. I know you said you took a break, but what was going through your mind? How did you feel at that point?
It was kind of surreal, and I was kind of numb. I got just a couple of stories I'd like to tell, just so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So this one time, I'm up north, and I'm coming across this river, well, a stream that had swollen basically to the size of a river. And it's like drizzling out, and there's a guy on the other side, and I said, is there a way around this? He says, no, you got to just go through it. And the guy's trail name was Lucky. So I go in to get across, and I slip and fall, and I lose half of my gear, and I'm soaked, and it's drizzling, and it's, in the 60s, and I'm up north, and I think I'm still in Maine. And I get to this shelter, and, walking, it helps keep you warm, and it helps dry out your gear because of your body heat stuff. But it drizzled, so I was still wet, and all my gear was wet, and the temperature was dropping, and I had nothing dry. I had no matches. It basically was pretty much lost everything. So I'm there at this shelter, and thank God there was two guys there, and they made some hot tea, and they gave me this cup of hot tea because I was starting to shiver. You know how and your joints start to lock up.
Oh yeah, you're probably approaching hypothermia.
Yeah, that's where I was headed. And these guys gave me this cup of tea, and I would just sip it a little bit, and I could feel it just go down my body. I don't know how much of that was real and how much was imagined, and then I draped my whole body over that cup of tea, so I got the heat from the tea in my face and the warmth of it down. I nursed that thing as long as I could, and I think that cup of tea saved my life that night. And then I got into my wet gear, but it was warm because I sat on it to keep it warm. And, I made it to the next day. Those guys have no idea how much that cup of tea meant to me. The majority of people are so ungrateful for what they have. I was so grateful for that cup of tea. You have no idea.
That's unbelievable. And I imagine that's changed the way you look at things even moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
Any other stories from that experience that really stick out to you, whether that was directly related to the cause or if it was something like that with the tea?
Well, I had a thought that just disappeared. But with that, the one other story that I went on these, people would always tell me, oh, wait till you get to Pennsylvania, because guys go through like 2 pairs of hiking boots in Pennsylvania because of the rocks and stuff. And since I started from the north and I'm going south, everybody says, oh, wait till you get to, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what it's going to be like. And when I'm up north and I go over Avery Mountain, and that's like somebody took a concrete, etched it with acid, then broke it with a sledgehammer. So there's razor sharp edges, and it's like 80 grit. I did what I call Polish Tai Chi. It took me, I walked a half a mile an hour, because if I didn't place my foot right, I dragged one toe across the top and it tore the skin off the top. So I had to place my foot, and it took me all day to get across that. I think I went 4 to 6 miles that day because I would walk from sunup to sundown. And my body couldn't catch up with the damage I would do to my body. So I would take 0 days. But it was hard for me to just walk for 8 hours and then sit and do nothing. So I just kept walking and then would keep taking 0 days, so that my body could catch up with the damage. But I mean, I was so arrogant in my, that I'm so tough and I can do anything. I am so lucky that I didn't get killed on that trail because, thinking that I was capable to do more, I was just lucky. Because if those guys weren't there, I could have probably died of hypothermia or got lost in the woods because I'd walk to keep warm. Didn't have the proper food. I got giardia when I was on the trail near the end. I lost 30 pounds in like 2 days because I didn't filter my water. And I bragged about it because that was another thing I did then because, I was so amazing and so awesome, So I bragged that, oh, yeah, I can drink any water. I drink out of streams. I drank out of a puddle and I'm fine. The guy says, okay. So they get water for me and bring me back a plastic bottle. I don't look at it and take a swig. Well, there was mosquito larvae in it and mouse turds. And I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't good. So I walked for 2 days and lose 30 pounds. And I get to this town. And the first thing I do is go to a health food store and get some black walnut tincture, which kills the parasites to get rid of the giardia. So, I mean, you can never prepare enough. There's a point where you just got to pull the trigger and go with what happens. If I tried to think about everything I needed for the trail, that's what I call analysis paralysis, where you overthink it and you don't do anything because you can never be prepared for every contingency. Well, I was prepared to be able to shift, but it would have been nice to not be so arrogant in my skills because, you make one simple little mistake. You don't look where you put your foot and you step into a hole and break your ankle. So you got to be really mindful and don't be so arrogant. I mean, I was definitely arrogant. I got to tell you that. It's only because of God, had pity on me that I made it.
Did you have a trail name?
Well, I called myself Tyvek, but that's not what they called me. I went up to these guys. We're all standing in a circle. And, we talk about food, gear, and our feet. Well, that's what most of them talk about. And I've never seen a Playboy magazine in anybody's gear, but I've seen, cooking books in their gear. They'll pull it out like it's a dirty magazine and look at a pork roast or something. So, I come up to this group and they're all talking about their gear and, I get this and that. And when I get up to the circle, they all look at me. They look at one another. They shut up. They turn around and walk away because I guess they figured, what are we going to say to this guy? He doesn't wear shoes. His gear looks like garbage. They couldn't complain anymore. So how are they going to complain in front of a guy like me? So they stopped. So I go up to one of them and I said, hey, what's your trail name? Because I loved trail names because they're so cool and I like the story behind them. So I go to this one guy. I says, what's your trail name? He says, Cornbread. I says, well, why do they call you Cornbread? He says, well, because I like to eat cornbread. I says, well, my name is Ty. And he says, I know what you call yourself. That's not what we call you. I says, what do you call me? He says, we call you the holy shit man. How does he do it? So I just shortened it to holy shit man.
That's even better. I like Tyvek, but
yeah,
that's a good name. That's a sign of respect. I think I was expecting something a lot worse than that. If you want to be honest.
And it's funny because every time I'd come up on a hiker, because they're usually looking down at their feet and they look up at me and they'd all say, holy shit, man. So it was like a no-brainer.
It's natural.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, I tell you what, that's a really cool tradition of the trail is to have a trail name like that. And I did want to ask too, you finished the trail. totally, unique dynamic. You're out there on the trail promoting it, hoping that the word spreads from there. And then just a few years later, you decided to do something else. You decided to walk across America on the highways and in the back roads to do the same thing, literally coast to coast, from the East Coast to the West Coast. What made you want to do that, and how was that different?
Well, the reason I did that was because I didn't see anything really change after I walked across the country. And I realized that to create awareness is one thing, but to have a plan and get something instituted is another. And then after you get instituted, you got to have it carried out. So I realized, I wasn't happy that nothing was being done that I could see. So then I made this sign, a sandwich sign that I carried across the country that said 18 vets a day commit suicide and the longwalkhome.org. And then I had a petition I had everybody sign, and I was going to take to Washington and tell them what to do, because they didn't hear me the first time. So, so I do that. And like that, I think I know what I'm doing and what's going to happen. Well, the first day or two, this woman stops me and she says, my son came home. I don't know if he's going to kill himself. I'm scared to death. And then she holds me like I'm her son and cries. And I was, at that time, I was still kind of a little numb. And then, every day, a mother would come up to me. And this was the litany I heard every day from a mother or a parent. And they'd say, he told me, I didn't believe him. I should have known, it's my fault. Then they would hold me like their child that committed suicide and cry. I cried every day for 10 and a half months. It was brutal. And nobody knows about it because they take 100% of the responsibility. They don't blame the country. They don't blame America. They don't blame anybody but themselves for their child's loss. And that broke my heart. The suffering I saw was just brutal. And it was way different because also this time I had a camper that would that would drop me off in the morning and pick me up at night. And I'd, pick up wherever I left off. So after a couple of months, my feet started to bleed every day because I wore the calluses off and I'm walking on pavement. So that was one of the differences, but I ate a lot better on this and I didn't get giardia. So that was awesome.
It's a longer experience. What do you feel like you learned at the end of that? Or what do you feel like you learned differently about either your cause or yourself or the world when you completed that one?
Well, I learned a lot of things. I mean, I wrote a book about it. I learned, it humbled me for one thing, because even then, up till the end, to the last month, I was still arrogant to think, I'm awesome. I did this. I'm going to go tell them what to do. I'm this great guy because I did all of this stuff. And then I realized that I never did anything alone. There was always somebody that supported me, and I believe in God. So if it wasn't for God watching over me, I could have got hit by a truck. A lot of things could happen. I went through some really bad neighborhoods. Nobody ever bothered me. Nothing ever hurt me. I mean, I went one time where they're having storms in an area and there was no storm around me. I mean, it was pretty neat because, I had the map that I charted my whole course. And there was this one time there was a whole storm in this area, but wherever I happened to be, there was no storm in that area. So either I'm just really lucky or, somebody's definitely watching out for me because there's so many things that could have went wrong that didn't.
What was there a day or an experience out there that you look back on and think of positively or favorably, similar to that day with the storms? Maybe a landscape or an interaction you had that really, really sticks out to you?
Well, it's funny you say that because right now I went into New Mexico And I tried to do it in such a way that I wouldn't go through the desert in the middle of the summer and hit a heat wave, because I can deal with cold, but the heat is not something I can do too well with. There was a big, like when you go into New Mexico and on this one road, there's a big sign that Land of Enchantment, and it's snowing. And I never thought it snowed in the desert because I'm from up north and I always equate, the desert with cactus and heat and never with snow. So it's snowing. And a coyote comes and walks with me for a while. And the coyote was like all lumpy. And I found out that's because they use poison to kill them. And that's one of the side effects of the poison, is that it makes them grow all these tumors on them. But it was like I was greeted into New Mexico by this coyote. It's kind of hard to explain, like little things. Like when I walked in this one area, I think I was still in New Mexico, and the wind is blowing right from my back. These two tumbleweeds come sideways against the wind in front of me and paused for a moment, then went on. And I thought, well, that's weird. It's like they defied the laws of physics and everything. They didn't know about physics, There's just little things like that happen. One of the, this may sound weird and strange, but I guess you figure a guy that walked across the country barefoot and stuff, he's going to be a little strange and weird.
You're kind of like those tumbleweeds. You kind of go against the grain a little bit your own way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a month from the end, and I'm still arrogant, and I'm on this road that's straight as an arrow. Because out there in California, I'm just into California now, in the desert. And the roads are straight along the railroad tracks. Like you can see the edge of the earth. You're in the center of a dirt circle. And, there's nothing higher than you, so you can see to the edge all the way around you. And I'm walking, and I just walked past this little town. I'm like 19 miles from this little town because I got dropped off, because that's where I ended that day. And I got dropped off 19 miles from that spot. So I'm walking and I've got this little internal dialogue going, like when you're out on your own, like I am a lot, you end up talking to your best companion, yourself, And, I'm having this thing, how awesome I am, how great I am. I'm the only guy to walk across the country barefoot that I know of. And maybe the Indians did it. And, I'm just awesome. And I'm going to Washington and I'm going to tell them what to do. And, I'm on TV and the papers and, all of this, just having a great old conversation. And there's nobody there arguing with me because it's just me. And then this car pulls up alongside of me and the woman rolls down the window, and it's not a brand new shiny car. It's well kept, and she's, doesn't have brand new clothes on, but they're kept, missing a tooth. And she says, I came out here to see somebody who cared. My brother was in the military. My father was in. And you know what? I'm going to get you the best lunch you ever had. And I said, wow, thanks. And she turns around and goes back. So now she went 19 miles out of her way to see me because there's nothing between me and that town. And she's going back there, going to get me a sandwich, come back. And so she's going to do almost 100 miles. She's going to do over 80 miles to bring me a sandwich. So that just fueled how awesome I am. Well, look at how awesome I am. This lady's doing this for me. That's just proof. And, I'm still, in my own little world, how fantastic I am. Well, half an hour later, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I hope she doesn't think I'm a vegan because I could go for a roast beef hero.
Right.
So, like half an hour to an hour later, she pulls up alongside of me again. She rolls down the window. She hands me out one of these little white drugstore bags, not real big. And she says, God bless you and your petition. So she rolls up the window and she's making the U-turn right around in front of me. And I open the bag, and she's just at my shoulder now and starting to go behind me. I open the bag. I see a bottle of Coke in there, a bottle of water, a Mars bar, and a package of those orange crackers. And I look up and I say, God, this is the best lunch I ever had. I turn around, there's nobody in the desert but me and this little white bag. Then I say, God, forgive me, because I expected my angel to have wings. And then I realized I would have never made it if he hadn't been with me every day. I had left him, but he never left me. And that, you know, that and between holding a mother every day, that really humbled me, because people that knew me, they said, yeah, when you walked the trail, you were a little arrogant. But they said, after you came back from across the country, you weren't arrogant anymore.
Well, what else was in there was a little slice of humble pie, huh?
Yeah.
I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I've been on adventures one time, and I thought, man, if my friends from high school or something could see me now. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of homeless. I'm filthy. Haven't bathed in a week. I have nowhere to go particularly, and I actually don't think they'd be that envious of me. I think they think, oh, man, poor Mason. He went off the deep end.
Right. Well, you know, a guy told me on the trail, he says, the only difference between thru-hikers and homeless people is Gore-Tex. And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
That's about right.
It's the truth. If a few $100s worth of material right there, that's the difference. I remember vividly on trips having to explain, like, no, I'm not homeless. I mean, even recently, my friends were biking across Florida, just doing a bike packing trip, and they held the door open for a woman at a grocery store, and she gave them $10 and said, "There's still chivalry in the world. Here, go get yourself something." They're like, "We're not homeless. We're just riding bikes."
But you know what's neat is the experience you get out, because money can't pay for what you get on that trip. You know, we are so into all these gadgets and all the stuff. When you go without it, what stuff do you really need? You know, and to find peace, what people would pay for that? You know, they work all these zillion hours, and they go to retreats and pay thousands of dollars to find that, where if they just took some time off and did like America's Vision Quest, did the Pacific Rim, did the Appalachian Trail, and just spent time with them without a phone.
Oh, it would do wonders. Well, I wanted to ask you, too, you didn't just do those experiences in a vacuum or in isolation. You started a nonprofit, The Long Walk Home, and you've recently written a book. Can you talk about some of the work that y'all do, which is how I know you, and I'm going to mention that in the intro, too, how we met and how we're even having this conversation. But can you talk about what you do there and talk about the book as well?
Yeah. Well, what happened was when I went to Washington the last time, you know, to tell them what to do, I realized that I don't tell them what to do. I do it, then go ask them for help, then give them the credit. So I went to the Keys and built a homeless shelter. And then what was really interesting, because, you know, I'm not much on paperwork. So the only thing I would do is I have a 1/2 of a page questionnaire. You know, what's your name, your address, your number, and, you know, are you related? Are you a veteran or related to a veteran? 80% of the people that were at my shelter were children of veterans, because they were destroyed before they even got out of the gate. So that was a really interesting thing to learn, because we think, oh, you know, I used to hear this term, the military is acceptable collateral damage, because we're only like 3% of the population, or, you know, 3 to 7%. I'm not sure whose book you're looking at, but but they don't realize we impact the entire country. Our families are in the impact zone. They, you know, look, my father had an impact on all of his kids. We've all drank, did drugs, and most of it been in trouble with the law and in jail. You know, if he had been a different person, none of that stuff would ever happened. So, yeah, so that was a big thing. So, you know, I started this homeless shelter, learned that, and then I closed it down because I was going through a lot of stress when my mother died. And we would help veterans with any issue they had, money, home, whatever it was. We would get help immediately. That was one thing about us. We could get you help now, today, not, you know, in a week when you're dead and it's too late already. Well, I closed the shelter down. Then I moved up to Venice because I was living in the Keys. I moved up to Venice and I start, doing the same kind of thing. And I had planned to open up gyms that are free for veterans and stuff like that, because that was my original goal, because exercise and some kind of therapy or meditation goes along with that to really, really heal post-traumatic stress and TBI. But what happened when Corona hit, I had to shift gears because I couldn't get out there in the public. So one of my vices is eating ice cream. If they don't have ice cream places on the Appalachian Trail, so
Right.
I was jonesing out there. But
Right.
so I'm in this ice cream parlor, and I'm 71. Okay, so I'm a dinosaur when it comes to computers. So I meet this 26-year-old kid, and he's doing the ice cream, and he says he's into internet marketing and this and that. He says, well, maybe you can help me because, I'm unable to reach people. Maybe you can help me and we can do something together. Well, this kid worked for me for a couple of days. And I said, what is it going to take to hire you? Because I just saw the potential of what we could do, how many people we were reaching. So what we did, we developed a 10 challenges to service, which is a program to help you get over your anger and create a new mission. And we need mentors, but the deal is, to be a mentor, you have to take the challenges so that you can administer them. And it's really powerful, because we had a guy that had a gun in his mouth. He took the challenges, turned his life around. And then I said, well, you can become a mentor once you finish these. Well, he says, well, I hope you can forgive me and I hope you're not angry with me. But, I already helped another guy. The guy he helped had a gun in his mouth and turned his life around. And I realized that I don't help anybody. I inspire somebody to do something. You do the work, because, we have people that want us to help them. They want us to do all the work for them. They don't want to do anything. If you're willing to work with me, I'll work with you. So when people come to us and they want something, because I'm such a softie, I'll say, okay, look, you take the first 4 challenges. If you can't do them, I'm not helping you, because you're not involved in this process. You're not helping you. I'm not going to help you alone. And like the first challenge is, what are you grateful for when you wake up? What are you grateful you accomplish at the end of the day? There's simple challenges like that. But if you've never done any self-work, they're huge. And they start to change your life, because you start to look at things different. So that's, that has been monstrous, because now we do it, we have an online 10 challenges to service program. That's part of one of the things we do. The other thing, we're going to be doing at Zoom starting in January, and we're doing them live at the YMCAs here locally. And when that goes off, we're going to probably be doing them at all the YMCAs we possibly can. And we're working to get that instituted in the prison. I was just in the prison last week, and they're talking about putting our program in the prison. And, that's because, you can give somebody money, but you didn't help them. You appeased your guilt. Oh, yeah, I helped this homeless guy. Did you help him? No, you enabled him. But if you helped him change his life, or you were inspirational and treated him like a human and got him to change his life, then you helped that guy. And that's what it's about.
Powerful stuff, Ron. I would love to direct anyone that's interested at all towards your website, thelongwalkhome.org, as well as checking out your book, The Long Walk Home. It's going to go into more details than you're able to even share right now, just because you're able to take your time, really go through more stories.
Well, it took me 14 years to write that book. So
yeah, absolutely. And now, what other things can folks expect from that book? Just more details about what you're talking about here?
Well, that and my transformation, because look, I was one of those angry Vietnam guys that you didn't want in your house. And I was a raging lunatic because I punished myself, and I punished everybody that was around me to hurt myself. So you could see my transformation, and you could shift. One of the neat things, one of the people, I don't know if she wrote a review, but she called me and she said, "Thank you for that book, because I was angry at my father most of my life because he was a veteran, but he had never been in combat. And the way he treated me and abandoned us and did all of this stuff, I was angry at him and hated him. After reading your book, thank you. I understand him now." And
Wow.
if that book helps, one person shift, and that's what it's about. The other thing is, I want my kids to know who their father is, because you live with somebody, but you don't know them. Your wife lives with you. Does she really know you? Does she know you when you were a kid? Does she know what you're thinking, what you feel, your transformation? Most people, I didn't even know really me until I wrote that book, because I really dug deep into who I was and why I did things. And I didn't even know some of the time why I did things. But after writing that book, I realized why I did those things. And now I can change, because, people say, "Oh, let go of stuff." How can you let go of something if you don't know where the handle is? When I wrote this book, I found out where the handles were, and then I could release them.
Well, man, was there anything else you'd like to share with the Adventure Sports podcast community? It's a lot of people who want to, do stuff like this and have ideas that they want to pursue that's very out of the box. It usually does involve shoes, though.
What is with these guys and shoes? I mean, I could see hat and gloves, but shoes. Well, you know what? I mean, if anybody wanted to do that, I'm open to talk to anybody about it. I had one guy call me that was going to do a hike, and he called me and asked for some advice, because, it's a little different. You have to prepare different, if you're going to do something like that, you have to research, and you got to know your own body, no matter what it is you're doing. If you're going to go, ice climbing or whatever, you got to get the right gear. You got to have backup. You got to know your limit. You got to know what you're comfortable with. And, to me, you push envelopes. You know where you're safe, and you get to that edge, and you go over it if you can, long as you know you can get back. So you expand your limits. But most of the limits is your own mind, where you think you can't do something. I say you can do anything you want. There's nothing that is impossible. Do you think you can do it? You can do it. But you gotta believe, and you have to be realistic, and your limitations, and you work with them, and you prepare. I mean, I owned a gym, so I was in really good shape. So it wasn't a physical struggle so much for me, other than my feet. One day, people would ask me, "Do your feet hurt?" And I would always say no. And one day somebody asked me, "Do your feet hurt?" And I said, "Yeah." And you know what they said to me? "Well, then put on shoes, stupid." So I never told anybody again. I never complained again about my feet, because it's my choice. I made that choice. Okay, well, hey, I appreciate all the time you gave me. And, I hope this helps somebody. And I'm always available to help anybody with anything.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thanks for making this happen, a year in the making, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, mate.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
What's better than Outback's limited time features? Enjoying them with your mates, obviously. There's bloomin' fried shrimp for Jessica. That is like so crispy. Espresso butter to spice up Henry's filet.
So bold, so juicy.
And a smoked cinnamon pecan old-fashioned that'll make Picky Pete's taste buds tingle.
I'd order another round.
At Outback, we've got something for everyone. So come in, relax and enjoy. Because good food is best with good mates. Come grab your table today at Outback Steakhouse.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.